50 years ago there was no garden. This was the wasteland at the back of my husband's farm. But the garden really goes back, the history of it, a long way, because it goes back 90 years or something like that, when he was a teenager in California. Most of us, when we start gardening, have no idea that this roses, dahlias, chrysanthemums grow wild. I mean, have you stopped to think, where do chrysanthemums come from? Do they grow wild somewhere? We met in the war in the village and we married, and I was absolutely inspired by his studies, his research into the ecology of garden plants. Now, 50, 60 years ago, nobody used the word ecology. Andrew translated French and German. He taught himself Russian because there is an amazing book on the flora of the USSR. And many of our plants, you see, come from America, from the prairies. They come from Russian steppes. They come from the Russian woods and forests. And from Iran and Iraq, where the gravel garden is. It was so hot and dry that the native weeds curled up and died. But no ponds. We made the ponds. And then under the trees we found plants for shade. Now, all those areas were, you could call them problem areas. I have found plants from the Mediterranean, from California, which will survive here. And so I've turned this problem into an advantage, if you like. If you live in wet Wales, where it rains and rains, you can't grow these things. So really it is a question of finding plants adapted to the difficult situation. I like to think I'm helping people with their difficult problem areas. If they're too dry, too shady, too wet, what can you do with it?
Rääkides kuivast ja kastmist mitte vajavast aiast, siis kui kuiv üldse on Inglismaal?
We are on the east side of the country. Last summer, when on the west coast and up through the Midlands and Scotland, villages were being drowned, too much water. We had the least rain we've had for 20 years. We had very little rain here.
Kust tulevad disainiideed ja võtted sellise grandioosse aia planeerimiseks?
I predominantly use species plants. I personally prefer structure. I love the shape of a plant, the foliage, the movement. I mean, I'm looking down there, looking at the seed heads on pulsatillas. There's a grace and an elegance and a charm when plants are made to look much the same. I mean, double chrysanthemums, or anything that's made double. They are magnificent for decorating a hall or a hotel, but not for me in the garden. And you see how many flowers last longer than 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Very few things last 1 month. When they're gone, what have you got left? If you have a handsome plant left, you make patterns with that. So when the colour is gone, you've still got the shape with tall plants, flowing plants, little creepy plants, all make a pattern of leaves. As you can see with the garden, over the 50 years, I like to use a combination of trees, shrubs and plants. As a gardener, I need the structure and framework that trees and shrubs provide. But there again, I need to choose trees and shrubs that are adapted to either the hot, dry conditions. So in the dry garden we have trees and shrubs from hot, dry countries, cistuses and so on. And then down by the waterside we have moisture-loving trees like the taxodium from America and the metasequoia from China. And in the woodland area we have shrubs which come from cool, shady places, yes. And then I try to group plants beneath them I think of as embroidery against a background of trees and shrubs. I enjoy colour, yes I do, but the colour of foliage to me is as important as the colour of flowers. Since I use mostly species plants, the colour is soft. I don't have a blaze of colour as you might have, for example, in a public park, where you'd have a mass of tulips or big bold tulips. I will grow the little wild tulips. The other thing I do enjoy about colour is repetition, because to lead the eye on, because the garden is large, not small, you need to lead the eye on to encourage you to move forward. So there's yellow here, there's yellow there, there's yellow in the distance. That's repetition.